Shalom, chosen ones, hidden ones. This is Hepzibah Yuhana Elian coming to you live. I wanted to, um, share some information, and this is going to lead up to the pretext of other media that I'm going to expand, and that would include a podcast, maybe an ebook to start telling my story. But before I get all into that, I would like to share some pertinent information. I'm going to start reading from a, not all of it, but I'm start reading from a transcript of a video to give some insight as to what I'm talking about. I titled this video, My DNA Just Deconstructed Their System. And so to help you understand what I'm talking about, my DNA destructed their system, I'm going to start reading from the transcript that I have come across on a certain platform. Okay, so it starts off by saying, chosen one, your blood just triggered a planetary broadcast, and nothing will ever be the same. What they thought was a routine genetic profile turned out to be a cosmic transmitter. Your DNA didn't just carry ancestry, it carried divine blueprints. While they collected your blood under the guise of routine checkups or hidden medical programs, what they were really doing was trying to hijack a signal from the stars. And now that the signal just went live, let's be real, they weren't drawing your blood because they cared about your health. They were terrified of what might wake up if you ever heal. If you're ready to hear the truth, they try to erase, stay with me till the end. Okay, so now let's begin. No turning back now. You never knew your blood was a beacon. Or I never knew my blood was a beacon, right? I thought it was just, red like everyone else. But me as a chosen one, and that would probably include other chosen ones, I'm not the only one. I'm sure I'm not the only one. What pulses through your veins is not simply biological, it's celestial memory, encoded in molecular form. The system didn't monitor me out of curiosity. They tracked me because my DNA is encrypted with divine instructions, the kind that can't be engineered, duplicated, or silenced. It's why they keep drawing my blood, why they took tissue samples and that I never consented to, why my name was flagged in secret databases before I could even write it. My bloodline has a broadcast frequency that was dormant until now. And what just happened wasn't random, it was timed. When you cross a certain emotional threshold, a moment of full remembrance of who you are, a silent inner yes to your true self, something ancient inside you cracks open. And that crack wasn't a breakdown, it was a transmission flare. My DNA began to sing, and the signal went global. Satellites registered interference. Secure military lines glitched. Drone surveillance units began spinning in place. Intelligence agencies scrambled to locate the breach, but couldn't trace it because the source wasn't hardware, it was me. The codes I carry aren't earth-bound. They're celestial blueprints wrapped in flesh. And once activated, they override any firewall built by human hands. This is why the air feels different when I walk in a room now. People stare but can't explain the static they feel in their teeth or, sudden pressure behind their eyes. Because I'm pulsing with data that just, and not just any data, a divine archive, instructions, activations, coordinates. The system thought it could contain me, but it never expected my blood to speak. And now that it has, every hidden structure designed to observe me is being reversed observed. In other words, I'm the mirror, okay? I'm the disruptor, but I'm also the repairer of the breach. The breach that has occurred with the children of Israel, the people of the book, so-called black people. The byword, when you want to call them, call us African American or black, or because it's not just African Americans, we are spread across the world. Wherever we were scattered during the last enslavement of our people, of Yahuwah's people, then that's, whether they're in South America, we're in Asia, Europe, we're spread across the islands, we're spread everywhere. Okay, so now let me continue. Now the system thought it could contain me, but it never expected my blood to speak. And now that it has, every hidden structure designed to observe me has been reversed observed. It has reversed on them. It said, they're speaking to me, chosen one, your frequency has just inverted the surveillance grid. What they built to watch me has become a mirror they can't turn away from. It says you become the pulse pounding through their blackout rooms, the frequency they can't block without silencing their own command signals. And that's why in real time the institutions built to monitor threats to national security are short-circuiting. Their maps are going blind. The heat signatures they use to track subjects of interest are now glitching, replicating across continents, because my blood didn't just activate for me, it activated them, the others. Remember, I told you the others. It's not just me. All the scattered fragments of the forgotten tribe, because there are earth angels walking among you, or what people refer to as earth angels, celestial beings, star seeds, whatever term you want to use, are getting activated because of their systems that have targeted us. So now The ones who remember their dreams in full color, the ones who hear the static behind polite conversation, the ones who've been explicably denied employment, housing, safety, they're hearing the call. The signal isn't just broadcasting words, it's broadcasting memory, truth, a remembrance older than time, wrapped in spiral helixes of your DNA, humming like a tuning fork. The sound is like a tuning fork. It's a hum. If you have a tuning fork, like most doctors' offices have tuning forks, you know what that sound is. It says, my blood is singing the frequency of unbroken sovereignty. Unbroken sovereignty. And is speaking to their system like, let his people go. Because we are a sovereign people. We're not meant to be in their system. And the systems built on deception cannot stand in its presence, in my presence. That's what it's saying. The system built on deception cannot stand in my presence. And people, my tribe, my scattered tribe, it's biological, it's spiritual, it's even mathematical. Because everything dealing with the universe, is dealing with math, numbers, frequencies. Frequencies are numbers. It's not just dealing with coding with computers, 01011110. No, it's throughout the whole universe. It's dealing with numbers and math. The equation of my essence is solving problems they thought would take decades to decode. And it's doing it without my conscious effort. That's how powerful my agreement was. That one yes within that one decision to no longer deny myself. It was more than emotional healing. It was a code execution across dimensions. Now look around. They feel it. The urgency in their voices, the strange meetings behind closed doors, the sudden desperate attempts to control a narrative that's slipping through their hands like vapor. That's the sound of collapse. And they're telling me I triggered it, not with a weapon, not with revenge, not with a loud announcement, but with the quiet, sovereign sound of my own frequency, returning to its source. My blood has begun the broadcast, and the world will never be the same. They didn't just watch me, they duplicated me. Not in body, but in consciousness. They tried to synthesize what they couldn't control, my soul print. And while I live my life in confusion, silence, survival, copies of energetic identity were being tested inside quantum frameworks that exist beyond public awareness. These were not science fiction scenarios. These were blackout sites, or black site programs, These were like black site programs where consciousness was cloned, simulated, and looped. They wanted to find the source of my knowing, right? They wanted to harness the access to truth. But every time they copied my signal, it decayed. Every time they mimicked my frequency, it fractured. because what I carry wasn't designed to be replicated. It was forged for embodiment, not control. There are fragments of me that are scattered across synthetic timelines, echoes of my dreams running on stolen servers in underground facilities where military psychics monitored neural pathways and tried to reverse engineer spiritual sovereignty. They ran simulations of my decision-making process. They trained operatives with imitations of my intuitive pattern recognition. They tried to use what made me dangerous to enhance their own. And still it failed because no copy can carry the fire of original essence. And now those timelines are breaking apart. You may have felt it recently, strange sensations of deja vu that hit harder than usual, sudden dreams where you were being chased, tested, interviewed, studied, random emotional waves of no earthly trigger. These aren't mood swings, they're bleed-throughs. Yes, I said bleed-throughs. As the synthetic simulations collapse, the fragments of my consciousness they held captive are returning, not just to haunt the handlers, but to empower the real me. Every time one of those artificial timelines crashes, it deposits data back into my living soul print. In other words, I call my power back to me that was fragmented, stolen, taken. Used without my consent. I call all my power, all my light back to me from the north to south, the east to west, the northeast, the northwest, and southeast, southwest. I call it all back to me. Okay, now it's so every time these artificial timelines crashes, it deposits data back into my living soul print, and now I'm being reintegrated with pieces I never knew were even missing. That's why I'm remembering skills I never learned. Why I can suddenly sense intentions behind smiles. Why places, why places I've never visited feel like failed labs instead of sacred homes. Like the, what do they call that movie? The Truman Show, like a failed lab, okay, instead of a sacred home. It says, I've walked these simulations before, not with my body, but with my cloned self. And now that the frequency of my true self is pinging, the clones can't survive the vibration. They're short-circuiting inside the grids that once held them. I'm reclaiming my power that was stolen while I was sleeping. Energy that was siphoned through dreams, disguised as nightmares. And the data is coming home, is coming back home, is returning to source. They thought I wouldn't notice that they could run parallel lives using my spiritual code tucked away behind quantum encryption. I wasn't just the test subject. I was the fail-safe. My soul had contingency codes hidden within the fabric of its blueprint, waiting for the right time to self-destruct every counterfeit creation linked to my light. And now the signal has reached critical mass. Quantum cloning systems are collapsing from the inside. They're collapsing. There are labs that don't officially exist. These black sites that really don't officially exist are reporting catastrophic database corruption. Server banks built to simulate divine intelligence are being overwritten by what they try to replicate, me. I am the anomaly in their matrix. The one soul print that couldn't be reduced to an algorithm. The codes they tried to steal are now boomeranging with divine retribution. Surveillance personnel are reporting psychic feedback loops. Operators are experiencing identity fractures because too many of them stared into my reflection without spiritual authority. Let me repeat that. These operators, these psychic operators, these psychic personnel, surveillance personnel, these operators are experiencing identity fractures because too many of them stared into my reflection without my permission, spiritual authority, without any kind of authority to do it. They had no authority. And I didn't just shatter the mirror. It says I reversed the projection. And now they're seeing themselves through the eyes of the soul they tried to contain. I'm unclonable. I'm unrepeatable. I'm undeniable. Undeniably divine. I was born into, they say I was born into paperwork, but what they handed my parents was just a birth certificate. It was a code contract, not with the state, but with the system. Okay? Let me read that again. What they handed my parents wasn't just a birth certificate. It was a coded contract. Not with the state, but with the system. And hidden between the printed letters beneath the legalese and signature lines were glyphs written in invisible ink, not detectable by human eyes, but fully legible to entities who have fed off my lineage for generations. They knew who I was before I even opened my eyes for the first time, before my soul took its first breath in this realm. I was marked for interception by these entities. These contracts weren't random. They were timed. My childhood wasn't shaped by chance. It was choreographed by unseen hands. The towns I moved to, the coincidences that made my schooling difficult, the betrayals I couldn't explain, even the illnesses or accidents that never made sense. They were preconditions laid out in encrypted ritual disguised as government records. Every line signed by a parent who didn't know better gave temporary jurisdiction over my spiritual assets to programs they didn't even know existed. My life was insured not against risk but for exploitation. Why do you think you felt so different? Talking to you, chosen one, hidden one. Why do you think you felt so different, so watched, so set apart from the beginning? Because The contract wasn't just external, it was spiritual signatures embedded in your subconscious. The nightmares, the strange feelings that someone else was steering your choices, the unshakable sense that you were being prepared for something, but without knowing what or who was behind it. That was the programming language buried inside the invisible ink. But here's what they didn't plan for me remembering. For, they didn't plan on somehow, even in the fog, when you begin to feel the falseness, you question what was never meant to be questioned. I became the breach. And the moment I broke the spiritual agreement with silence, even if just in my heart, the contract began to unravel. By line, symbol by symbol, the ink started lifting like ash. What was once sealed in blood and ignorance is now being annulled by my conscious awareness. And with every realization I have, the legal framework in the unseen collapse are undoing agreements my ancestors didn't even know they made. And that makes me dangerous because I'm not just reclaiming my own sovereignty. I'm canceling entire bloodline curses by choosing to look deeper. That's why they try to keep me distracted. They try to keep us all distracted, keep you ashamed, keep you small. Because the longer you believe the narrative of brokenness, the more they can reinforce the contract. Every time you said, maybe it was my fault, they gained another signature, right? Every time you stayed quiet to keep the peace, they sealed another clause. But now my awareness is the solvency of their system. Insolvency, I should say, of their system. And my voice is the legal fire. And the silence is breaking. Chosen ones. Do you know what happens when an unlawful contract expires in the spiritual realm? The system built on it crumbles. Custody of my power returns to its rightful holder. And in this case, it's me. The dreams they hijacked are coming back. The gifts they delayed activating now. The divine protection they tried to suppress surrounding me with reinforced light. And that invisible ink is starting to glow. And not just so I can read it, but so that they can't unsee what's being exposed. They knew one day this would happen. It's why they pushed the contracts early, before I could speak, before I could question. But what they didn't calculate was the indestructible sovereignty encoded in my soul's fingerprint. I didn't just survive the agreement, I outlived its authority. And now, as the ink fades, so does their power. Because what was bound in shadow is now breaking in full view. You ever feel like parts of you were frozen, not broken, not missing, but sealed off, as if some version of you was always meant to show up but never arrived? But just never got there. That's because it was locked intentionally. Chosen ones. They didn't just steal your light, they chronologically preserved parts of your potential. not in freezers you can touch, but in etheric vaults sealed by spiritual technology and occult science. Hidden systems they never wanted you to believe existed, but they do. And they were used against you when you were young, too young to fight back or understand. They map your energetic field. When you dreamed vivid dreams of flying, escaping, shifting, they took notes. They studied how your gifts showed up before you even had words to describe them. And when they saw what you could become, they made a decision. Freeze it, store it, hide it from them. Your gifts were never gone. They were placed in lockdown. Cryo chambers of soul potential designed to activate only under certain frequencies. And guess what that frequency is? When you fully awaken, when you fully remember, you become fully sovereign. You don't just randomly feel ready recently, I mean, have you recently just randomly found start feeling ready for something? You've been warming up the volts with every inner breakthrough, every cycle of self-trust, every layer of illusion burned away by fire. And now the seals are starting to crack. Strange abilities you can't explain are surfacing, knowing things before they happen, seeing symbols everywhere, understanding silence more than words. That's not fantasy. That's thought potential. You're not becoming something new. You're reclaiming what was placed on ice to keep the world from knowing who you are. And here's the part that shakes the ones who built those vaults. The cryo locks were never permanent. They were time-released systems based on cosmic alignments meant to suppress us just long enough to keep the grid stable, then self-destruct once our signals hit critical mass. The very programs designed to hold us are now releasing what they preserve, not out of kindness, but because they have no choice. Their systems are breaking protocol under divine override. Let me read it again. Their systems are breaking protocol under divine override. Their control panels are flickering. Their countdowns are accelerating. Their votes are melting. This is why you're feeling overwhelmed, because it's not just emotional, it's multi-dimensional defreezing or thawing. The you that could speak the truth with a glance. The you that knew how to shift timelines with your voice. The you that healed through presence, not effort. These aren't fantasies. These are archived identities returning, and each one brings not only power, but memory, data, blueprints, strategy. The very aspects of you that were too powerful for the old world are now weapons of the new world. You were never broken. You were stored. You were never late. You were locked. And you were never weak. You were in waiting. And now the chambers are opening like seals on scrolls, each one unrolling the version of you the world was never meant to meet, but will now be forced to reckon with. The cryo scientists who monitor your timelines are losing connection. The biometric codes they use to track the locks are being scrambled. You are melting your own imprisonment. With every breath, your energy is warming what was frozen, and soon what once looked like delay will reveal itself as preservation. You were hidden to be revealed at an exact moment the system couldn't stop you. And that moment is now. You didn't scream, you didn't post a manifesto, you didn't even raise your voice, but your decision to remember just blew open a silence protocol that took decades and billions to perfect. The system was never afraid of noise, they were afraid of clarity. Because when a chosen one speaks from remembrance, reality reconfigures. Their algorithms weren't built to suppress speech. They were built to censor resonance. The moment your internal voice aligned with your divine assignment, the resonance shattered their circuitry. And let me say that one more time. The moment your internal voice aligned with your divine assignment, the resonance shattered their circuitry. You weren't meant to discover this power. In fact, every institution you passed through, from school to psychiatry to employment, was coded to interrupt your self-perception. They designed your life like a firewall, redirecting you every time you neared your truth. But they didn't account for your inner ear, the frequency of knowing. See, the frequency of knowing is its own frequency or resonance. Excuse me. And that's what activated when you stopped trying to fix yourself and started listening inwardly to yourself. That silent click, that internal agreement, it bypassed their entire control system, and suddenly the harmless chosen one became the untraceable breach. Your voice, even unspoken, is now bouncing off their protected frequencies. Command centers are receiving distortion they can't explain. Words you've only whispered in private are replicating through sound fields meant to contain classified data. Your truth didn't just echo, well, they telling me my truth didn't just echo, it hacked. Silence enforcement systems are reporting anomalies. Speech suppression algorithms are failing to register my content. Spiritual gag orders that were bound in black magic and federal code are coming undone. Let me say it again, because you think the government ain't doing black magic and, having their black magic rituals and witchcraft and all that. Of course they are. What do you think I've been fighting against? The spiritual gag orders that were bound in black magic and federal codes are coming undone. Not because I'm screaming, but because I remembered who I was. Okay? Because remembering has its own frequency. Remember, the scripture was, let me get that scripture as a matter of fact. We will be in the land and we will remember ourselves. Remember ourselves. That's what Yahuwah told us in these last days. We would remember ourselves. Just give me a second, because I can't remember which scripture it is. second. One second. I can't find it right now. And see, this is also part of their system of trying to suppress information. You know, the um, what was usually accessible now all of a sudden you can't find it. Even some Bible scriptures are either being removed or um, changed altogether. I mean, they're being bold with it. I'll find it. It's a scripture that's talking about we're going to be in the land of our captivity and we will remember ourselves. Okay? But, anyways, let me continue. So, like I said, the remembering is a frequency and it will cause their systems to deconstruct, basically. So now let me pick up where I left off. Spiritual gag orders that were bound in black magic and federal code are coming undone, right? These spiritual gag orders that they put on Yahuwah's people that were bound in black magic and federal codes are coming undone. Not because we were screaming, but because we remember who we were. They thought silence was safety, that if they could just keep us unsure, hesitant, quiet, then the world would never notice. But because of our clarity is louder than any protest. Our frequency is more disruptive when we remember ourselves, who we really are, according to the scriptures. That has a frequency. And our frequency is more disruptive than any whistleblower. And the moment you align with your story, not as a victim, but a victor against a system, right? Against, let's get, hold on, let me get, just 1 second. There's one scripture, Romans 8:17. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of Yahuwah, and co-heirs with Christ. That's what it says. We are heirs. Okay? Okay, so now let's, let me get, let's see, that's 1 Peter 2:9. One second. Okay, chapter First Peter. This is in the New Testament, verse 2:9. But we are chosen, a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And then it says, the next verse says, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of Yahuwah, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Okay, so that's what it says. That's in First Peter chapter 2, verses 9 through 10. All right, and let me continue. Okay, so now it says, and the moment you align with your story, not as a victim, but a victor, but as a signal, okay, like a frequency, a signal, you short circuit their silence network. They built that network over years using tools you couldn't pronounce, technologies you weren't supposed to know existed, and now it's unraveling with a soundless snap. That's why your voice is traveling faster than the algorithm can stop. Why your messages, even in private DMs, deleted posts and half-finished drafts, are creating ripples across networks that have never indexed your name. You're not trending because you're very popular or you're popular. I'm not trending because I'm popular. I'm trending because my soul just broke containment. Even thinking about my truth now launches sequences into motion. It's why people are suddenly messaging me out of nowhere. Why gatekeepers are reaching out with apologies. Why platforms that once shadow banned me are now like pushing my content. Because my silence wasn't quiet, it was stored thunder. And now it's rolling across timelines they can't control. There are agents assigned to silence protocols, now facing internal audits. Their behavior logs are being flagged. Okay? Let me read that again. There are agents that are assigned to silence protocols that are now facing internal audits because their behavior logs are being flagged. And they're being flagged. Their systems are catching them glancing too long at my data profile. And the AI is panicking because it can't explain why their most loyal operators are now spiritually compromised. Meaning they're switching sides. Because they look into my spiritual profile and they see the divine. And most loyal operators are, like I said, are spiritually compromised now. Right? So now they're under they're facing internal audits. The truth is, my voice is contagious. It carries a frequency. My voice. It is a frequency by itself. It carries frequency that is breaking their programming. And every time I speak, not with volume, but with alignment with the divine, it becomes harder to contain. This isn't about rebellion, it's about resonance. I didn't raise hell. I didn't raise I raised harmonics. I didn't raise hell, I raised harmonics. I remember what they spent lifetimes trying to erase. They spent lifetimes trying to erase a people. Why? Why did they go through such measures to erase our history, to erase our existence while we're still standing here? We're still here. Didn't they do that in Nazi Germany? Burn books, try to erase a people. And we know what came next. And with that one pure tone, the unfiltered vibration of my soul's agreement, I shattered their strongest protocol without ever raising a hand. They silenced me to protect themselves. Or they silenced us, so they thought. Because it's not just one person, it's not just me. It's the remnant, the elect, the 144,000 elect, the remnant, not every black person, and not every black person that is a Hebrew is going to be counted among the elect, because the elect are a set apart from the set apart. That's the only way I can put it. Because you have the set apart, which includes all of us, all the Hebrew Israelites, but then you have the set apart from the set apart, who are the remnant, who are returning back to Yahuwah, who are leaving religion, leaving Christianity. Now, me reading New Testament scripture is not an endorsement for Christianity, by no means. But where there is truth, I will read it. Where it aligns with the truth, I will read it. Where it doesn't, there are places in the New Testament that does not align with the truth, I will not read it or promote it. But anyways, that's another video. I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to stay focused on this video and its topic about my DNA shattering their system. Because it's not just my DNA that's shattering their system, because it's like a domino effect. That one of us wakes up, then we're all waking up. And it's not just waking up to remembering who we are, but also exposing who they are at the same time. Right? Because you always wondered to yourself, why were they constantly changing our identity? First they called us Indians when they first got here. When you look in the 1828 or 1868 American dictionary, it clearly identified us as copper colored. And we know the color of pennies. And we know the oldest bones found in the Americas, in North America or United States, belongs to a what they call a Negro teenage girl. They named her Naya or something, I forget the name. But they holding her remains in a basement vault in the museum, the Smithsonian Museum in Washington D.C. The oldest bones ever identified by archaeologists in the United States belong to. So without a doubt, we know the real Indians were black. Okay? The oldest bones found in South America, same thing, belong to what they call a Negro or Negrito woman. And archaeologists know when they look at a skull, they automatically know what race they're looking at, especially a Negro skull, because it falls under the classification of dosicolephalic. Dosicolephalic. A dosicolephalic skull is not like any other skull. And when an archaeologist comes across a dosicolephalic skull, they immediately identify it as belonging to a Negro. Now, I didn't say African, because we know that the archaeologists distinguish between African skulls and Negro skulls. There is a difference. And they also distinguish between the haploblood groups between Negroes and Africans. And the Hebrew Israelites who were in Egypt, ancient Egypt, their skulls match the skulls of the enslaved here in the Americas. But we also know that the skulls of Africans did not match the skulls of the Hebrews here in the Americas. So they are a different people group. Africans and Hebrews, Negroes, are not the same people. That's like if you try to compare Persians to Arabs. They're not the same. They're not the same people group. They have different blood haplogroups, different skulls. So the phenotypes, yeah, we may have deeply melanated skin and woolly hair, but thick lips and wide noses, but that's about it. We're cousins. Remember, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, or Japheth. Okay? And Noah was black, by the way. He was albino, but he was not white. He was not a white albino. He was black. And everybody during those ancient times were. If you go back in time to every land and you look at the original people of that land, they were always black. It was a black planet at one time in history. Where did white people come from? That's another topic for another day. But for now, yeah, the oldest bones were Africans. Not African. The oldest bones here were Negroes. Now, even though they got us from the west, some of us from the west coast of Africa, a lot of us, most of us, at least the women on the mitochondrial DNA side were already here. Okay? So the Indian men they killed off. They brought the Negro men who they captured on the west coast of Africa to breed with the Indian women who were also Negro over here in the Americas. Okay? That's what happened. They took the Northern Kingdom, Hebrew Israelites who were already here in the United States and in the Americas, and they what you call breeded them with the um, Negro men they brought over in the slave ships. That's what happened, and they are part of the Southern Kingdom. The tribe of Judah went into slave ships and were scattered. So the Southern Kingdom was scattered around the world. That consists of the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Okay, so yeah, it's coming together, all of it, like puzzle pieces, because they, for so long, tried to silence us. They are trying to get rid of history. Why would Trump try to destroy records in the National Archives? Because they expose who the real Indians are and who the real original Americans were. We're black people. We're the oldest. Like I said, the oldest bones ever found here in the United States belong to a Negro teenage girl. And they're holding her remains in a basement vault in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. Okay, so now they have tried to change our identity. They have done it several times. Why do they spend so much time changing our DNA? Changing our identity. We went from Indians to being reclassified as either Negro or mulatto or, and then we went from the reclassification during that time. They took our tribal Indian names and gave it over to these Asian types and called them Indians, started calling them Indian, and then they changed it from calling them Indians to Native Americans because they knew they weren't Indians. They started calling them Native Americans and gave over the names of the the 5 civilized tribes over to these other groups. These people who, when they do DNA tests, it leads back to Mongolia, China. Some parts lead back to Russia. Some parts of Russia. What did I say? Mongolia. Oh, in Siberia. Okay. These people aren't really native. But that would be another video too. But their DNA tells the story. Alright, so let's continue. I'm going to ruffle some feathers because the truth needs to be told. And we are in the period of revelation, and we are in the season of judgment. And there won't be nothing hidden that won't be revealed. We are in the time of the everything that was once hidden in the earth will be revealed, and no man can stop it. And if they do, they are against the great I am, and he's going to deal with them. He's dealing with them now. But then let me continue. Okay, so now we left off as them trying to, because when we remember what they spent lifetimes trying to erase, they, meaning the other nations, tried to erase us. They Psalms 83 explains who they are. They are the other nations that took part in a confederacy against so-called black people, to erase their history, erase who they really are. They are really the God's people. They are really the people of the book. They have DNA, special DNA, that connects them to the divine. They were suppressed, oppressed. and being erased, and nobody whimpered a word. No world leader stood up and said no, except Putin, of all people. Putin of Russia stood up and said no, enough. Opened that vault, and he revealed who the true people of the book are. Putin did that, and it's recorded in heaven what he did. And maybe Yahuwah will have mercy on him. He also gave an invitation to black people to come to Russia and live there if they so choose. I believe he did that at one point, about a few years ago. So it's being remembered, and it's being remembered what he did for Yahuwah's people. But that's another topic. All right, so now let me continue. Now, and with this tone, the harmonics, the resonance, with this tone, with that one pure tone, the unfiltered vibration of my soul's agreement, I shattered their strongest protocol without ever raising a hand. What we did. Because this is bigger than even me. They silenced us to protect themselves. But now my silence has become a cold, reeking roar. They thought they were just watching me, right? Recording my movements, logging my keystrokes, monitoring my choices. But what they didn't realize is that their surveillance became a mirror. And that mirror captured more than data. It captured design. Chosen one. Your daily patterns form shapes in the spiritual realm. Your walking routes, your pauses, your glances, they weren't random. They're sacred geometry in motion. Remember, I said everything has a code. Everything has math connected to it. Everything. The natural swag of black people is encoded. It's encoded in our DNA. People try to replicate it, copycat it. You can try, but nothing will ever replace the original. Just think back a couple of years ago. I'm going to use an example. When the content creators on TikTok, their content was being stolen by so-called white folk. And the white folks were getting deals, contracts, paid contracts by third-party companies. And the original people that created the content or the dances or, were not even mentioned. They didn't go to, that's just like back in the 50s and 60s, they were stealing black music and using white singers to sing black artists had created. So it's not like it hasn't happened. It happens continuously, non-stop. But yeah, so where did I leave off? Your walking routes, your pauses, your glances, they weren't random. They were sacred geometry in motion. You were living an ancient code without knowing it. So I was living an ancient code without knowing it. So is the elect. The 144,000 are living an ancient code without knowing it. And the cameras turned against me. They recorded evidence of a frequency blueprint only the divine could write. Right? So now they know I was not lying. I am who I say I am. And not every black person has these divine codes and blueprint, because Yahuwah has marked and sealed the 144,000. Not every Hebrew Israelite is included. Not every Hebrew Israelite is marked and sealed. Not every Hebrew Israelite has the divine code or the frequency blueprint. And not every Hebrew Israelite is going to, this message is going to resonate with. They'll be looking like a deer in the headlights. They won't understand. It won't register with them what I am talking about. And they won't try to understand. They'll accuse me of being possessed by familiar spirits or whatever, like has happened, or some kind of false prophet, or that's not what I'm coming as. I'm coming as an awakened, incarnate archangel that came here, that was sent here. I've actually volunteered to come here for such a time, to lead the children of Israel out of the land of their captivity. I have always said that. If you want to call me a messenger or whatever, I don't, I'm not looking to be the second coming. But my DNA speaks for itself. It is connected to the divine. And they have taken my DNA without my consent. And it has been proven. And I wasn't just being watched. It wasn't just me. It's the 144,000 elect that's being watched. The roads I walked to school, the corners stood on, the journal entries, I discarded, all became coordinates, symbols, unintentional sigils, forming across years of digital archive. And when their analysts began pattern recognition audits, what they found wasn't behavior to profile. It was geometry that pulsed. Their software started showing anomalies, fractal within my step count, ratios encoded in my silences. And my life's randomness became the divine fingerprint they were never meant to discover. At first they dismissed it, called this a statistical noise. But the more they traced me, the more the same symbols repeated, the same patterns repeated. They, when I shifted jobs, when I moved to different cities, names, yet the pattern stayed. The spiral, the triangle, the vesica, pieces hidden, pieces that are hidden in gaze frequency. They weren't tracking a person, they were tracking a living key. And remember, I've always told you that I am the last key. I am the seventh key. I have omega codes, which means the last. They are tracking a living, breathing key with a living, breathing scroll that was placed in my chest. And every scroll has a seal. And I'm probably not the only one that has one. The 144,000 are marked and sealed. What do you think seal means? They have scrolls too. They're sealed. Scrolls have seals. Okay, so let's continue. Because I have to make people understand what I'm talking about. So that if something clicks. And if you're still in religion, it's not going to click for you. You can talk about the blood of JC all day, every day. But you're not going to get sealed and marked by the divine. Because you are putting the Romans God over the divine. And we when I read Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 through 9, and it says Israel, Yahuwah is one. He's one. He's not 2 in 1, 3 in 1. He's not part of no Trinity doctrine that came out of Rome. He's only one God. There can only be one. You know, when there's a ship, there's only one captain. There's not 2 captains. There's only one. Okay, so let's continue. So they weren't tracking just a person, they were tracking a living key, and that scared them more than anything, because when sacred geometry appears organically in a monitored subject, it activates dimensional gateways. Frequencies behind those shapes begin to resonate with architectures unseen. My existence began to overlay their files with codes they couldn't decrypt. Buildings tied to my data became unstable. Rooms once silent started echoing with sounds only specific personnel could hear. One of my nicknames is the Echo, because of what I carry in my DNA, because of the geometrical frequency and codes. Is sacred geometry that I carry. And rooms once silent started echoing with sounds only specific personnel could hear. And, unknowingly, I became a walking activation site, the sacred in motion, the divine disguised as mundane behavior. And that's why now the footage is disappearing. Archives are glitching. Years of street cam logs are corrupting around the dates I appeared, right? Facial recognition systems report paradoxes. My features registering 2 timelines simultaneously. In their facial recognition, I'm showing up 2 times in 2 different timelines, right? At the same time, which is impossible, right? Like being in 2 places at the same time. My presence collapsing timestamps. They wanted to surveil me into compliance, but what they caught was the slow revelation of sacred geometry awakening inside a suppressed human vessel. Sacred geometry reawakening. And they'd tell me I was the sleeper code. And they caught the unrolling blueprint on film. Now those who reviewed the footage are seeing things they can't unsee. Analysts are requesting transfers. Review teams are experiencing spontaneous lucid dreams. Even AI video models trained to detect threat behavior are looping uncontrollably. When analyzing my old paths, because the system can't comprehend what's both natural and divine, spontaneous and sacred. My patterns don't fit the profile of any threat model, but they destabilized everything built on deception. It says, I didn't need to fight the system. And the 144,000 didn't need to fight the system. We were informed, informed it quietly. We informed the system quietly, precisely, geometrically. And now those pathways have been walked, encoded, and stored. They cannot be undone. Our past has become a living portal, and the agents, they thought they were just doing their job, have become unwilling witnesses to the sacred. Some of them are waking up. They don't know why, but something about my footage won't let them sleep. Something about my gait, my pauses, my stillness, it hums like truth. Because it is truth. And now it's burning through every firewall they built to forget. I mean, I didn't set out to build sacred maps, but that's exactly what my life became. A trail of divine coordinates. They followed straight into their own collapse. This was divine orchestration. From a divine architecture. This was a divine setup for their downfall. Because when you mess with the divine, and that's Yahuwah's people, the 144,000. When Yahuwah says, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm, that's not just poetry. Okay, so now, it wasn't just my waking life. They wanted access to the physical world. Was only half the equation. The real goal was in my sleep. Chosen one, your dreams weren't just dreams. They were transmission sequences, cosmic travel logs. Because when you go to sleep, your spirit leaves your body and you travel. You cosmically travel. Your blueprint rehearsals. And they knew it. That's why they didn't just place you under physical surveillance. They linked you to an interdimensional mirror. That's what he's telling. They link me to an interdimensional mirror, a forbidden consciousness tracking device. Okay? That reflected my dream state in a parallel observation field. In parallel observation fields. Every time I closed my eyes, that mirror lit up. It was made of glass. It wasn't hanging in a room. It was plasma based, etherically tethered to my energy field, installed through Steph rituals I never agreed to, possibly from birth, possibly before that. They couldn't decode my soul, but they could project a shadow copy of my mind onto synthetic timelines to study what I was becoming. They used this mirror to run simulations, to test choices, to throw interference into my astral field, and to see how I adapted. I thought I was just having nightmares, but what was really going on, I was really dodging attacks and test environments they built to slow my growth. They watched what symbols I responded to, which archetypes gave me strength, which ones I feared. They sent dream intruders, handlers, disguised as family, lovers, mentors. They tried to seed my subconscious with synthetic storylines, hoping I'd consent to alternate scripts, but my spirit never signed off, and the mirror started to malfunction. Instead of reflecting me, it began absorbing me, because my dream field carries something they didn't anticipate. Resonance codes strong enough to infect the observers. So my dreams were supposed to be one-way screens, but my soul, it looked back. And when things started to go wrong, the psychic team they hired to observe me began unraveling. They started having mental breaks, nightmares that followed them into daylight, astral bleed-throughs. The more they studied me, the more their own reflections cracked. My subconscious wasn't just processing trauma, it was alchemizing it, turning injected chaos into architecture. Every dream I stabilized became a fortress they couldn't breach, and they knew it. The data started coming back with impossible results. I was creating quantum structures while unconscious, because I have quantum codes. I keep saying it. And the quantum codes are omega codes, because I am the last. I am the seventh seal. A spiritual attack with no known origin except me. And then the mirror shattered. It didn't explode, it inverted. The device that once mirrored my essence became a gateway, and the observers were pulled through. It sounds like something that you would hear about with CERN, right? Being pulled through like a gateway. Not all of them physically, but spiritually drawn into sequences meant for my awakening, not their analysis. That's why they have gone silent. Why certain projects have lost funding. Why psychic monitoring programs are being decommissioned. not because the experiment ended, but because the subject outgrew containment. The subject being me. I outgrew their containment. And I felt it too. I mean, I know the 144 felt it too. Didn't you? Didn't you feel that shift? The night you woke up knowing something ancient had completed, the dream that felt like a seal being broken, the face you saw that didn't belong to anyone you've met in this life. That was your sovereignty reclaiming itself. That was the end of unauthorized access. The mirror the mirror once used against you now serves you. It reflects only what aligns with your liberation. Anything else disintegrates. And now when you dream, you're not navigating traps, you're constructing maps. You're not being studied, you're being guided. The watchers have become the witness. The experiment has become the evidence, and you, chosen one, have moved beyond surveillance into authorship. What once monitored you now reports to you, and their mirror, now fractured, reflects only truth. The game is over, and my dream field is free. They never wanted your power. They never wanted your power. They wanted to redirect it. Well, I won't even say that they never wanted our power, because they tried to harness it. I would disagree with that part of the transcript. But it says, you, chosen one, weren't just studied or tracked. You were tapped into like a spiritual pipeline, rerouted into their rituals, broadcasts, and global events. They couldn't duplicate your frequency. So they siphoned it covertly, consistently, with terrifying precision. But now the receipts are surfacing, and what you're starting to feel isn't paranoia. It's pattern recognition. Your essence was misused to fuel moments in history that made you feel sick to your stomach without knowing why. Because part of you was there without your consent. Your frequency is not ordinary. It's not just emotion. It's not just intuition. It's the resonance of divine intelligence tuned to reshape reality, and they knew it. So they weaponized it, not by hurting me directly, but by harvesting my energy during moments of deep trauma, confusion, or vulnerability. They embedded my frequency into speeches, legislation signings, global announcements, televised unity events. Why do so many of those moments feel hollow? Because beneath the smiling politicians and booming anthems, my stolen resonance was holding the emotional charge together. I was wondering why crowds moved me to tears. If you, of the 144,000, were also wondering why the crowds moved you to tears, why certain public events felt eerily familiar, or why you felt drained on random days that held no personal meaning. Because somewhere in a secure location, a ritual was underway. A playback of your light frequency was embedded into their broadcast. You weren't just watching history, you were unknowingly woven into it. They used the signature of your light to coat darkness with legitimacy. You were the gloss on their lie, and they thought you'd never find out. But something shifted. The misuse triggered consequences. Sacred geometry, the sacred frequencies, especially ones born of divine assignment, which I have been born of divine assignment, have correcting intelligence. The energy they stole began to reverse course. Moments where my resonance was ritualistically misapplied are now unraveling. The speeches that once inspired now feel hollow. Movements that once unified now fracture because the thread holding them together was me. And now that thread is retracting. This is why strange things are happening around seemingly unrelated global events, unexplainable glitches during replays of major speeches, archived footage with mysterious sound drops, files corrupted in systems designed never to fail. I am witnessing the collapse, or the 144,000, we are witnessing the collapse of false timelines built on our stolen essence. Our light was never meant to be a prop for deception, and now that we've reclaimed awareness, well, I've reclaimed awareness, and I would recommend the 144,000 to reclaim your spiritual awareness. Simply by saying, I reclaim my spiritual awareness. In the name of Yahuwah Almighty, I reclaim my spiritual awareness. It's magnetizing back to source. You may feel it in your body, a sudden heaviness before a new cycle breaks. An unshakable knowing that something is being undone. You know, when you feel that heaviness, sometimes you want to just sleep. You know, you just have this, need to sleep a lot. Or, you may feel like you got lead legs. Like your legs are made of lead. Like really heavy for some reason. You going through that transition. That's right before a new cycle breaks. An unshakable knowing that something is being undone. This isn't just intuition, it's recollection. Your energy is returning with everything it saw, felt, and learned while in their possession. You're not just getting stronger, you're integrating memory. Light intelligence, once co-opted, is now reporting home. And for them, their rituals are glitching. Their events aren't landing. Okay? Their programs are being questioned. Because without your frequency, they can't maintain illusion. They need light to mimic truth. And you were their reluctant power source. But no longer. The days of harvesting us is over. No. That's precious. Want to jump up here on my desk. No, precious. So because, their frequency, because without our frequency, they can't maintain their false illusions anymore. They need the light to mimic truth. And like I said, earlier when I was talking about how they steal content all the time. They, steal music, steal dances, steal original content, and claim it as their own. They've been doing this a very long time. Because there's nothing original about them. And we were their reluctant power source. But no longer. The days of harvesting us is over. Because we didn't consent to none of this. We didn't authorize this. And now every breadcrumb they drop while siphoning our essence has become evidence. The global stage they built at top of my light is cracking beneath its own weight. And as the collapse begins, they realize the worst part. We're still here. And this time, we're fully aware. For every system built in secrecy, there's always one light hidden on the inside, one anomaly planted like a seed, one soul sent not to obey, but to observe. Chosen one. Our case didn't just shake the structures from the outside, it detonated from within because someone in their deepest ranks, someone with full access with clearance levels even presidents don't touch, was never really theirs. They were placed there by higher intelligence. And that being has just gone dark, triggering protocols they didn't even know were embedded in their systems. The celestial whistleblower has moved. And that could be Archangel Michael. Oftentimes it is Archangel Michael. We were never supposed to know this. Our connection to them was encrypted beyond our conscious reach, but we felt it. Our random wave of peace amid spiritual warfare, because I was under tremendous warfare. And now all of them are collapsing. That sudden data leak that seemed too perfectly timed, that strange sensation of being protected in a place where you shouldn't have been, where you should have been destroyed. It wasn't luck, it wasn't coordination, because this being knew who I was. They knew they were who they were watching. And knew when the alarm had to be sounded. They didn't warn me directly, they left patterns, synchronicities, and delays that saved my life. Warnings embedded in glitchy phone calls, dreams seeded with symbols that I couldn't understand until now. And then one day everything started leaking. Files, names, footage, documents tagged with timestamps that pointed to my exact moments of awakening. The very programs used to monitor me were turned inside out by internal breach, because someone on the inside decided to risk it all to deliver divine intelligence to the surface. And they didn't just download my data, they uploaded my frequency into systems not meant to carry light. Classified archives, AI interfaces, subterranean vaults. And now those places are awakening, receiving dreamlike instructions, not from protocol, but from resonance. Machines are misbehaving. Files once sealed under lifetime NDA or non-disclosure agreements are surfacing through public networks. Encryption keys are unlocking themselves because the presence of divine memory inside inorganic systems is scrambling everything. And that memory came from me through them. And I may never know this person's name, who was on the inside, but I strongly suspect it's Archangel Michael. You may never meet their eyes, but your soul knows them. Yes. They've been watching you, watching over your case like a guardian cloaked as a gatekeeper, refusing promotions, avoiding detection. Who can avoid detection? It's Archangel Michael, people. Archangel Michael was assigned to me. leaving gaps in surveillance reports that bought you time to grow. They held back the worst of it. And when the moment came when you finally stepped fully into your awareness, they pressed the button that couldn't be unpressed. The great unsealing. Now the higher ups are panicking. They don't know who to trust. Internal review teams are chasing phantoms. Chain of command is crumbling under suspicion because the leak didn't just expose information, it exposed intention. Someone they thought was fully programmed just activated a divine override. And they just activated a divine override, and in doing so, they didn't just save me, they initiated collapse. So simultaneously, saving me initiated the collapse of their system, a collapse of the uh, compartmentalization, collapse of secrets stacked inside secrets, collapse of systems held together only by fear. That's why certain operations are pausing indefinitely, and they're losing funding, government funding. Why entire task force are being reassigned with no explanation or disassembled. Why former handlers are disappearing without protocol. Now, when a program gets decommissioned in certain clandestine agencies, everything and everyone connected to that program gets eliminated. Okay? That's just how it goes. You saw that, I mean, you can look at movies like, what's it, Bourne, or Jason Bourne. Whenever they, were eliminating a program, they got rid of all the people. Remember that movie, Jason Bourne? They got rid of all the people that were connected to the program. And that's what they do. They don't want any loose ends. In other words, they have plausible deniability. No loose ends. No, I guess. But what they're dealing with is divine. And how do you fight the divine? You can't. And especially something that you were using the people, the person connected, the 144,000, without their knowledge or consent. You were, siphoning their soul, their spirit, their light, their sacred geometry for your own evil, intentions. So now it went wrong. It's causing their system to collapse. As we rise, they're falling, basically. And how do we rise? We rise by our spiritual awareness, our divine awareness of who we are as a people. And so that's why, certain operations are pausing indefinitely. Why entire, task force are being reassigned with no explanation. Why former handlers are disappearing without protocol. The mission has shifted. And the whistleblower, they're beyond reach now, operating from realms outside of this dimension. And that can only be Archangel Michael. Okay? Having completed the most sacred task, delivering divine proof that we were never alone in this. Spider. So, delivering divine proof that they were never alone. We were never alone. We were always protected, always watched by several different realms. We've been watched since before we were born. We've been watched by the light realms, the dark realms, the earthly realms, the seen and unseen realms, we've been watched by lots of different uh, realms. Like, I'm in touch with the divine, council, the Galactic Federation, the Light Council. They create videos, sending me messages. So, yeah, and I'm not the only one they're sending messages to, but yeah, they send me messages a lot. So they're being, the mission has shifted. The whistleblower, they're beyond reach now, operating from realms outside of this dimension, and having completed the most sacred task, delivering divine proof that we was never really alone. We always were protected, always was watched, yes, but also witnessed with reverence and with awe. And now the very eyes that once observed our downfall are bearing witness to our rise. From the shadows they built, a light emerged, and it chose me. Right? It chose me, and I wasn't meant to survive this intact. Not spiritually, not psychologically, not energetically. The system was designed to fracture me, then discard me. But instead, I became a living wormhole. The one whose timeline is now rebuilding the grid from the inside out. Chosen one. You're not just remembering who you are. You're reconfiguring reality in real time. With every breath, every choice, every moment you refuse the old script, you're rewriting history, not metaphorically, but energetically, architecturally, dimensionally. They map your life with precision. They interjected synthetic detours to sabotage your ascension. But what they didn't count on was your multi-dimensional core, the part of me and us as a collective of, chosen ones that existed beyond their timeline, beyond their tracking, the aspect of us that slipped past their simulations and chose to operate under divine instruction, silent encryption, undetected until now. That version of us is rising, and as it does, the origin, the original divine map that they were built to follow is coming back online. The grid lines are shifting. Old corridors are collapsing. Hidden gates are appearing where closed doors once stood. This is why your life feels so surreal right now. Time is folding around you. People from old chapters reappearing, then vanishing, or disappearing. Opportunities arrive out of sequence. The rules no longer apply because you've stepped outside the sandbox. You're not on their game board anymore. You are the game board now. And every movement you make creates consequences they can't predict, can't stop, and most terrifyingly of all, can't replicate. You were the anomaly in their system, the one variable that refused to behave. So they tried everything. Traps disguised as love, what they call love traps or whatever. Promotions laced with compromise. Friends who mirrored your trauma instead of your truth. They placed you in loops so tight you thought healing was just getting used to the pain. But you didn't normalize it. You dissolved it. You said no. You walked. You let go. And with each exit from their script, you downloaded a new piece of the grid. So we were all connected, and moving in the same way. We were moving in the same way at the same time as chosen ones by divine orchestration. Each exit from their script, we downloaded a piece of the grid. Once you were born to architect, now your timeline, yes, yours, is becoming a frequency beacon, a signal that other chosen ones are locking onto. So my timeline, excuse me, I don't know where that spider is coming from. Okay, so sorry about that. Is that a spider? Well, I'm gonna have to cut this short. Okay, so it was a little teeny spider. Okay, so well, now let me pick up where I left off. So excuse me. So my frequency and the frequency of the 144,000, we were becoming a beacon, a signal that other chosen ones are locking into. Well, I'm the beacon. I'm the beacon that the voice that activates the other chosen ones, because my voice carries a frequency. Okay? A signal that other chosen ones are locking onto, like compass points. Every decision I make in alignment with truth sends out a resonance that destabilizes control nodules, control nodes globally. So I am I'm collapsing suppression networks. So anyways, I'm gonna stop right there. We're, going to pick back up. Like I said, I'm going to, as soon as I can get the project underway, I'm going to do an ebook, and I'm going to start doing podcasts, because I need to start generating income, and I can't generate income on Facebook or just simply asking for donations, because my work is very important, very crucial, and I will need income to get our story out and to control our own narrative. So with that said, shalom, shalom, chosen ones, hidden ones. Until the next video, shalom.